Jeff, thank you very much for having me down to Dubai College of Tourism.
It's a pleasure to welcome you here. Thanks for visiting us.
Yeah, I feel like I'm back in school.
Back in the classroom, right? It's a nice classroom, isn't it?
It's beautiful, yeah. Jeff, I'd love for people listening and watching just to get a bit of a background on yourself, firstly, before we start going into the college. Maybe your first array into the world that we call the wonderful world of hospitality.
My first job in the world of hospitality was a sales executive back in what was then the Ramada Hotel in Manchester in 1996. I can go into a long story about Manchester, but I won't. That's a whole other episode probably. And then I came to Dubai in 2000 at what was then the JW Marriott in an old part of Dubai called Deira. And then I've been in the industry ever since.
And was Marriott a big stint?
Huge. Marriott was my life until 2013. And then I was fortunate enough to go and get my own little playground. Had my own little hotel for a while until 2019. And then the sun shone on me again. I was lucky enough to sell that business just before the pandemic. You would think I had a crystal ball. I didn't. It was pure luck. I owned and operated my own hospitality business for a few years, both down there in the operation, but then as a hands-off owner, I guess. I had a manager in the business. So yeah.
Amazing.
All sorts.
Can we talk about what you miss about being in the hotel industry on any given day? Because it's actually rare to have someone on the podcast that has had a life in operations of hospitality, is maybe a few years out of it, and, you know, reflecting now from the classroom what you might actually miss.
It's a really easy answer for you. I miss the customers. You know, you get into that industry because you're a people person, certainly from my perspective. And the happiest time for me was just chatting and laughing and talking with customers, particularly when I had my own little business and people were coming on vacation. So they had a lot more time for you. You would get to know them, why they chose the destination, you know, why they chose the property. You could have good discussion about anything from sport to politics to just life. So I think for me, that's what the business is. You know, I think when you think about when the original hotels were started, they were started because someone needed a place to stay while they were going from A to B. And most hotels were set up at river crossings, bridges, airports, right, to provide people with hospitality. Now they're set up in many cases to get returns. But, you know, I enjoyed the original hospitality reasoning.
Yeah, I actually went to a hotel university in Ireland, so the Strachan College of Hotel Management is my background, so it's nice to be back. Can you give us an overview of what Dubai College of Tourism is, the types of courses you have here, the types of students, the ethos you're trying to build, and maybe a little bit about where students tend to go on their first day after graduation?
Sure, I'm happy to. So Dubai College of Tourism was really set up as a vocational technical training college. So if you think about, you know, back in Ireland, you would have typically two types of institutions. You would have a tech college, and then you would maybe have a university where you would go on to get a degree. So we don't teach at the degree level. There are many hotel schools around the world where people can apply and go on to get a formal degree. We teach at the levels below that. So our students come in at level 4 and they get a UAE nationally recognised qualification. Then they can stay with us and get a level 5 award. And then they could stay with us for another year and get what we call a level 6 advanced diploma. At any stage along the way, they could leave and go out and work in industry. So many of our students would leave after year 1 with a level 4 qualification in hospitality and get an entry-level position. They might end up being a waiter. They might end up working on the front desk. Of course, our chefs would enter into the kitchen brigade at the lowest level, and then they would choose to grow their career from there. Many of our students just aspire to get into the industry. Yeah, they want to work their way up and eventually be a manager, a supervisor, maybe even a GM. But they're coming to learn the skills that an entry-level position would require.
And are they coming from secondary school at like 18, 19? Are they coming back from other industries at 25?
That's
25?
a very interesting question, because most of the students come in having graduated grade 12. And our focus is on students who grew up in Dubai. So we would call them third generation kids. They are born in Dubai. They would be holding a passport of the nationality of one of their parents. And they've probably never lived in the country that they hold the passport of. And they have no intention to go back or go to that country. They intend to live here in Dubai. And working in our industry is very appealing for them. They see working in places like Jumeirah, Marriott, Accor, Atlantis as extremely aspirational. And why not? They're fabulous properties. So they come to us having graduated grade 12. So yeah, typically 18, 19. And they could graduate from us, after a year, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah. Now, recently, we have seen a lot of students who have graduated universities in other programs and simply cannot find work in those industries. It could be that they've graduated with a generic, business administration degree. There are thousands of students out there with generic business administration degrees, and they have decided that they need to specialise and get a specific skill. Culinary arts is a good example because we teach the only nationally recognised qualification in culinary arts in the country. So they'll come back and study to be a chef, and they're pretty much guaranteed to go in and get a job.
Yeah, it's something I want to touch on. Back in Ireland, we used to call generic courses in university like arts and crafts. And it was kind of just you'd go to university for the sake of 4 years and you'd hand your money over. But when you finish your 4 years, what did you really have? Whereas with Strachan College of Hotel Management, we're the only university in Ireland that has 100% graduate employment since its existence. And that shows, it also shows the supply and demand that's a little bit out of whack. And we had a great event this morning with lots of leaders in the hotel industry led by the great Gerald Lawless, the former CEO of Jumeirah Group, who I'm sure you know well. And we discussed a number of things. One of the reports that I brought up was an article by Reuters back last year that was Accor, no experience, no resume, you're hired. Mm-hmm. And it was obviously a tagline, but the meat of the article was all about how hospitality just can't get people back into work. That must lead very nicely for the opportunities that your students have.
Yeah, look, I think that rhetoric is different depending on which jurisdiction in the world you're sitting. I think we all know that, vast parts of Europe are struggling to get just a workforce, and that they're having to work on restricted hours, restricted openings, because they just don't have chefs, front of house staff. They just can't operate for 7 days a week. That is not playing out here in Dubai. If you open a vacancy for a job in a hotel in Dubai, it would not be unusual for you to receive over 1,000 applications in 20 minutes, because simply people from the countries that are surrounding us want to get into Dubai. It's such a great aspirational place to want to live and work. Now, what that means is that the employer really has a chance to choose someone who has skills, because then they begin filtering out. If you have 1,000 applications in 20 minutes, then you can choose someone who has the skills. And that's where coming to college and gaining entry-level knowledge is really important. So yeah, that might be the case in Europe, where you could, pop your CV online, and if you're prepared to work in a hotel, you get a job. But in Dubai, not so much. The employer still has the ability to select and choose someone who could be useful and well-trained and hit the ground running.
So if I'm a student and I'm looking at what's next, and I look at the great Royal Atlantis opening, and I look at the Bulgari Hotel, and I look at Jumeirah Al Naseem or the Burj, and I'm like, wow, what an opportunity to work in that. And as you said there, in Dubai, it's slightly different. Job posting goes up, hundreds, if not thousands of applications go in. And I don't mean it to be crude, what's the sell to come to Dubai College of Tourism? Like, how are you enabling students to have a leg up when it comes to going back out to the market? What are the courses that the classes they're in? We're in a classroom now. What sort of practical knowledge you pass on to the students?
Yeah, so you have to think about the college as a bridge from schooling to the real world. And what you typically find with students who are coming straight from schooling is that they need a lot of life skills. Yeah, and you probably hear that a lot at the moment from all industries. Students that need to be able to stand up, to make presentations, to deal with guests, to make eye contact, to overcome confrontations, to be able to have dialogue, constructive dialogue. So that's a lot of confidence building. So we spend a lot of time here in the college doing exactly that. Role plays, right? Standing up and making a presentation, your elevator pitch. Building out, for example, your CV, your LinkedIn profile, having the confidence to recognize what your skills are. But then on top of that, we also provide all the practical modules. So for example, our students will go through opera training. I think you were waiting to get into this classroom today. The students were actually going through opera training, learning how to check in a guest into the hotel, actually using the system. So those things are critical. They'll actually do housekeeping. They'll learn, they'll take a dirty room, they'll learn how to service that room. They'll do beverage preparation. For example, they'll know how to make all the different coffee types. They'll know how to brew teas, how to deal with customer questions. So all of these technical skills, but also the life-building skills, so that when they do go out into the industry, employer can be confident that, they don't have to teach them the basic skills. And that's critical.
Love it. And I think this is a lot of things that are wrong with some universities, is that it's been the same course for maybe 30, 40 years and it's not changed. And I think hospitality is one of those ever-evolving industries. And like, how often would you look at your curriculum and liaise with industry leaders like the Mr. Lawlesses of the world and say, what's happening on the ground? How do we make sure that next year's batch is up to date and we're not just sitting on our laurels and it's the same course 10 years ago?
So you've asked a number of different questions within that. Okay, so
fortunately, we are not a university. So many universities are in that difficult position of having to stick to the curriculum that they've had, because that's the way that academia operates. Yeah. So when you've got a university having to deliver academic qualifications, there's a lot of research and academia and academic papers and a lot of theory and perhaps not a lot of practical. So that's a nature of the beast. We're very lucky in that we're a college and we're in the vocational space. And what that does allow us to do is be a lot more nimble. So it does allow us to work with our advisory council, who we meet with every quarter, and listen to what the industry needs in terms of specific skills. They might say, look, technology is changing in the housekeeping space. Chemicals are changing in the housekeeping space. They might tell us what's happening in the culinary space. For example, the technology around ovens and how ovens are used and how easy it is now to program an oven has changed in the last 5 years. So in making sure that we integrate that into our curriculum is critical. And we're lucky that we can do that. We can make a module change, submit that to the ministry, get that approved and embed it into the curriculum for the next academic year. So we can be that reactive to industry needs and make sure that the student who's graduating is getting the most relevant education possible.
Amen. One thing that we spoke about this morning with the group of industry leaders was, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on this, was they maybe started their careers in hospitality 30 years ago, probably on average, 25 years ago. And it was very much about going in at the ground level, rolling up the sleeves, saying, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Doing anything you were asked to do of, and you would grow up the ranks. And there's been a change in outlook or expectations by a younger group of individuals now entering the workforce, where they might expect more earlier in terms of how can they get to management level much quicker. How do you manage those expectations of the students maybe wanting to go in at a more senior level?
Look, this is an evolutionary challenge that the industry has to be prepared to take on head first. The first question is around, changing attitudes towards work and the attitudes that need to change towards management. We, for example, here in Dubai now have a population of students who are growing up. They live here, they live with their family. Typically, over the years, we've managed a workforce that live in our housing, and we can tell them to get to work on an AM shift, a PM shift, or a night shift. And those employees have not had their family here. Their family might be back home. So even if you have a child who's sick at home, you don't take that day off to care for them because they're in another country. You just go to work. That's changing. As we have a city where people live here and have a family here, and therefore may have a child who needs to be cared for who's sick that day, so you call in and say, I'm not coming to work today because I'm taking care of my child. Employers have to get used to that. So there is a huge change in how the city will evolve, live, and that will need to be dealt with by supervisors, managers, general managers. They need to figure this out. And that's going to continue for the next 15, 20 years. The second part is this drive to want to be a manager, you know. Certainly in our case, for our students, they're prepared to go in at entry-level jobs. But I think everybody, if you're performing, if you're excelling, and you can move quickly through the ranks, you don't want to necessarily be held by old-fashioned policies that say you have to be in your job for 18 months, you have to have served for 12 months. They don't understand why. And to be honest, I haven't met any HR managers that can explain why. These are old policies designed around old systems that the industry needs to think very hard about. And if someone is excelling and they can move quickly through the ranks, why not? Why would you hold them and then they exit right to another employer? So some of those practices are being dealt with by some employers, and some are still sitting on their hands. And what will be will be. People will choose where they want to go and work and what they want to do, because now in the market you can move around. So,
no, I think you're completely right, and it was what was talked about this morning. Is if you're not on top of giving them the career path and growth and being open with them about what's next, they will move right and they'll leave the industry. That's why there's such a high turnover.
It's very interesting. So our industry does a terrific job of providing exceptional humans who are customer focused, language skills, grooming standards, okay? I can tell you a funny story. When Dubai Mall opened, okay, the shops in Dubai Mall specifically targeted the hospitality industry. The recruiters from the big retail brands, big fashion brands, luxury brands, they went and sat in the lobbies of hotels and they simply said to the workforce, would you like to live out? Would you like flexibility in your life? Would you like to make your own way to work? And people left for the same salaries, but they were given their life back. And they left in their thousands to move from the hospitality industry to the retail industry. Same skills required. Customer service, language skills. They moved. These are transferable skills. And if the hospitality industry doesn't realize that they are a target for other sectors to recruit from, it's people that are not just leaving to go from one hotel to the other. They're leaving the industry to go to another industry. And we have to realize that that's going on.
Yeah. No, listen, you're spot on. It was definitely something that was, the leaders were cognizant of that fact. So I think they're aware of it. And maybe there's a two-way communication where they can learn from people like yourself and the college of what the expectations are from the students coming out.
I think they can learn from a lot of parallel sectors.
Yeah.
I mean, our industry sometimes can be quite insular. We have HR directors who've grown up in the industry. They move from one brand to the other. They've only ever been in hospitality. Maybe we need to bring in HR directors from other sectors, from retail. Maybe we need to go and learn from others and be open to not always recruiting from within our own sector.
And listen, Jeff, I've absolutely loved this chat. I'd like to finish on, I've always thought hospitality is such a varied industry. I've been fortunate enough to have a passport to the world when I started in this industry. And, while I'm on the tech side of hospitality now, I still feel I'm part of the industry. There's so much. It's so varied. It's not just becoming a waiter or barman or front desk agent. It's a huge array of opportunities. What would if you were speaking to, a class full of 18, 17, 19-year-olds who are looking at what career to go into, why would you sell hospitality as a great option?
But because of the transferable skills that you can get. I think, and I always say this to the students, don't look at the narrowness of hospitality. The skills that you get in hospitality are transferable to so many other things that they might come to you when you're 25, 30, 35, 40 years old. But the grounding that you get in hospitality and the situations that you have to deal with and the customers that you deal with, they can set you up for life. You can transfer those skills everywhere. As you well know, okay, you've transferred from hospitality into tech, but those skills and this ability to sit here and do a podcast are skills that you learned because of the industry. And I think that, is a huge benefit to students if they can realise that.
Just to add to that, because I feel like, I'm 31 now, I feel I was perhaps part of the last age group that when we were finished school, we'd go out and play football with my friends, or we'd go outside and play rugby, or we'd mess around. Whereas now I see it in hotels the whole time when I'm there. I travel quite a lot, I see it on flights. Parent goes, kid has been maybe slightly irritated, iPad on, earphones sorted. Have you seen over the years being at the college that the confidence and to approach people and just communicate is much harder now than it was? Because that is one of the skills I think you learn in hospitality, but maybe this new generation don't naturally have it as well as we would have had it.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was alluding to when I said that you have this skills gap that's coming out of schooling. So we must remember that schooling is very outcome focused, right? So they literally have a student for 12 years and they have to get them through history, geography, English, maths. They have to get them through subjects. And along the way in those schools, you learn skills, but not probably to the extent that we require them in industry. That may be because you just don't have the student long enough, you don't have time to focus on it, and because there are distractions that could be around gaming, it could be around, we're seeing the COVID generation coming to college now, where they learned online. So you're not meeting irate customers, right? You're not having conflict resolution, you're not building friends networks, you're not having to walk into a room and introduce yourself from the get-go. Those are tough skills to learn. And yes, that gap is widening from perhaps your generation where, you might have played rugby, you've been in a changing room, you know how to handle yourself, there's a bit of banter with the guys. You're building life skills. If that's not happening, then that will manifest itself in life later on.
Amazing, Jeff. Listen, I've absolutely loved this. Thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And congrats on everything you're doing here.
Thanks for visiting us at Dubai College of Tourism. It's a pleasure to have you here.